Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We're sitting out here and there are ducks in the bush behind me. Whether they come out or not and join us is anyone's guess, but they are in there causing a little bit of a racket, to be honest. I don't know what they're knocking over, but whatever. So today I wanted to dive in, quite literally, into a topic that isn't glamorous, to be honest, but it's one that every duck owner should understand. Parasites. Yeah, the freeloaders of the animal kingdom, the things that drive us all bonkers, especially in the spring. These are the tiny creatures that live and feed off our ducks, giving nothing in return except trouble. Okay? And while the idea might make your skin crawl a little bit, knowing how to recognize, prevent, and treat parasites can make a huge difference to your flock's health. So what are parasites? Well, these guys are organisms that survive by taking nutrients from another living thing. In this case, ducks. They're in the bush. They are over there. So, they survive by taking nutrients off of your ducks. They don't just pass through harmlessly. If they did, they wouldn't be an issue. They live on or inside of their host, depending on the type. They can cause anything from mild irritation to life-threatening illness. So when we talk about parasites in ducks, usually we classify them into two different categories. Generally, we say we have ectoparasites, which are external parasites such as mites and lice. These live on the surface, hiding in the feathers or on the skin. Sometimes you'll see eggs on the shaft of the feathers, and then you'll know you have external parasites. We also have endoparasites, which are internal parasites, such as roundworms or Coccidia. These live inside the duck's body, often in the digestive tract. Even if your flock is healthy now, parasites are a fact of life for all poultry. The goal isn't to pretend they don't exist, it's to manage them so they don't cause serious harm. Because parasites exist. They are just in the environment. The best thing you can do is figure out how to manage them. So let's start with the external parasites, the ectoparasites. Mostly, these are going to be mites and lice. If you've never seen a duck scratching itself like it's got the world's worst itch, you may not realize just how miserable these pests can actually make your ducks. Okay? Lice, they bite, they suck blood, they feed on skin scales. This constant irritation can cause weight loss, poor growth, and a dull, unhealthy appearance. Mites are tiny relatives of spiders. Sorry for that image. And they are equally nasty. Some species lay eggs inside the skin or at the base of the feathers. Over time, mites can cause anemia and severe weakness, possibly even death. So they're important. Okay, it's important to note that they are on your bird and to take care of it really, really fast. You have to notice these things. So how do you notice them? Well, you might notice that your ducks are preening excessively. They might be looking restless. They might start having damaged feathers for no good reason. Not oh, I think you're molting. You already molted and you still look kind of funky. These kind of things. In severe infestations, you're going to want to check around the eyelids, around the bill. I know ducks don't have like big combs and wattles like chickens, but still check those general areas. Check under the neck. Check the base of the head. Check in those areas that you might think they might hang out, and check the vent. Check their butt. Are there a bunch of bugs around their butt? That's a good place to look. And you do want to check and see, is your duck looking pale? This is hard to see in a duck like the cayugas over there. They've now moved over there. The cayugas have black skin, and so it's hard to notice if they're pale. But on a duck that has pink or yellow skin, you can generally look at the skin, kind of part the feathers around the eyes, and go, ooh, you are looking paler than normal. So start paying attention. So what do you do about it? First of all, try to prevent it. Good hygiene goes a long way. So clean your bedding regularly, provide proper bathing facilities, make sure they can get in and get themselves clean. Ducks naturally spend a lot of time in the water. And it's got to be clean, fresh water. If your water is dirty or stagnant, you are inviting trouble. So try to keep that water clean and flowing, or at least change it every day. So if you can't have your water flowing, obviously you can't have your water flowing in just one of those little rubber feed pans. We use a lot of those. So you dump it every day and refill. Okay, make sure the water isn't stagnant and dirty. The cleaner your ducks are, the less chance they have of these infestations. Now, if you do have an infestation and it gets heavy, well, you might need to use a poultry-safe insecticide. So you might be, depending on the version of parasite you have, you might be looking at ivermectin, a few drops on the back of the neck. You might be looking at an internal dewormer. It depends. Always follow the manufacturer's directions and do not be afraid to consult other people who've done this before. Okay? And different products are available in different countries. But please do check that, first of all, it is safe for waterfowl, because a lot of things are not safe for waterfowl. We start using them and they're not safe. But also check that it's safe for your other animals. There are some poultry dusts, for example, that have a compound that is toxic to your barn cats. So don't use that if you have cats. So just check carefully and don't be afraid to ask for advice. And ask advice from people who actually follow the science. Not, well, I've used this for 35 years. Right, but it has a lifetime egg withdrawal and I want to be able to eat their eggs. So be careful about what you're using, and it's okay to call a vet and ask. Okay, it's okay to call a vet and ask. It's okay. Check the product labels themselves, because they'll tell you. If a product is not meant to be used on food-producing animals like your chickens and your ducks, it'll say on the label. And then just don't. Right? Just don't. Use something else. Ivermectin tends to be my go-to. Again, don't use it unless you know you have an infestation. There is a problem with overuse of these kind of things. So, yeah. Use this what you need to use, but don't overuse it. And make sure you're using the correct product for your animals and the infestation you have. Now let's talk about endoparasites, the hidden invaders. These are the internal parasites in ducks. These are like your gapeworms, your large roundworms, tapeworms, capillary worms, coccidia, these kind of things. Mostly worms and coccidia is what you're going to deal with. Now, mature, healthy ducks can sometimes build a partial immunity to certain internal parasites, but your young birds or your older birds, these birds are already stressed. And they are, if you have a sick bird, these guys are much more vulnerable, okay? So if they are young and healthy and stress-free, they tend to weather things better. So try to keep them that way. I mean, there's nothing we can do about getting old, right, guys? But we can do something about keeping them happy and stress-free. So what are some signs of internal parasites? Weight loss is a big one. Weight loss or failure to gain weight. So if they're growing chicks and if they're growing ducklings and they're not growing, you have a problem. So definitely keep your eye on the ducklings. Poor growth in ducklings is a huge deal. You also want to look for reduced egg production without another cause. So if your ducks are suddenly not laying and it's not hot out and the light is sufficient, you still have 12 to 14 hours of light, and they're not overly stressed and they're not hiding their eggs somewhere weird, why aren't they laying? They might have an internal parasite. Also look for coughing or head shaking. That's especially true with gapeworm. And diarrhea, especially if it's bloody. I know it's hard to tell if birds have diarrhea because everything is wet, especially with ducks, but look for signs of blood in the stool. Because if you do look for signs of blood in their poop, that's often coccidia. Also see if they're lethargic or overly weak. Check their mucous membranes. You can do that by opening the mouth, see if they're pale. And if your birds just start dying, birds that die, if you have more than one young, supposedly healthy bird that dies, something's up. Okay, young birds can die. It happens, especially in chickens, but ducks too. You can have a bird that was perfectly fine and is about a year old, which is not very old, and all of a sudden they just pass, and that happens. But if that one is followed by another one, and that's followed by another one, and it's not predators, and there's no explanation, it's probably a parasite. So let's talk about coccidia because it's kind of a special case. Coccidia are protozoan parasites that can be deadly, especially in ducklings. These microscopic organisms live in soil and attack the cells of your duck's digestive system. The signs of coccidia typically include watery or bloody diarrhea, fluffed or ruffled feathers, like, oh, I just don't feel very good, puffing up. They'll be lethargic, they'll lose their appetite, they'll act kind of depressed and withdrawn. So instead of being, hi, I love you, they're going to be like, just go away. And they will definitely have weight loss and reduced food consumption. Hi, Wildfire. So look for that as well. Fly. So overcrowded pens for coccidia, overcrowded pens and wet, dirty bedding are major contributors to outbreaks of coccidia. While chickens and turkeys are often treated with medicated feed to control coccidia when they're young, ducks are more sensitive to these medications. Do not give medicated feed to your ducks. Even though you're going to be like, well, what if they get coccidia? Okay, if they get coccidia, we are going to treat coccidia specifically. We are not going to use a preventative because ducks don't handle it well. So, small backyard duck flocks rarely need medicated feed, and you really should never give any medication to your ducks if they don't need it. So consult an expert or a vet or somebody who's done this before, but don't use medicated feed on ducks. It's very bad for them. Okay. Chickens and turkeys, turkeys, I don't like it either. I don't even use it on my chickens because I have silkies. But you could debate whether or not you want to give your chickens medicated feed. There are pros and cons to both. Ducks don't do it. So we're talking about ducks today. Do not use medicated feed to prevent coccidia. All right, let's move on to deworming and treatments. So dewormers are medications designed to kill internal parasites, like your ivermectins, like your fenbendazole, like these kind of things. Now, these are very specific medications. They do really well at the one thing they are supposed to do, which is kill parasites. They don't do anything else. So you can only use your dewormers like ivermectin and fenbendazole to treat parasites. They are not antivirals or antibacterials, so don't break them out for anything other than actual parasites. You usually can find them at feed stores or poultry suppliers. But here's the big thing. Not all dewormers work on all parasites. So sometimes fenbendazole is better on a certain parasite, sometimes ivermectin, sometimes piperazine. It depends. So few of these are actually approved for use in waterfowl, and that's a lot of it is simply because it hasn't been studied in waterfowl, because people haven't studied it. There are not enough keepers of ducks to have that pop up. But overusing your dewormers can cause drug-resistant superparasites. So again, don't use your dewormers unless you know you have an outbreak of a parasite. So you should never deworm your ducks just in case, okay? Don't make it a routine habit. Even with our horses and our goats, we are learning that we should go away from routine deworming and instead only treat when something's actually wrong. So work with your vet or work with, you usually, even if you don't have a vet that will see ducks in your area, you can usually run fecal samples into them and they'll run them for you. Fecal sample is just a swab of their poop. So you can generally talk to your local vets, see if somebody is willing to do that for you. Because a lot of times, even if they won't see the bird, they're willing to run the sample for a small fee. So a fecal test can confirm which parasite you're dealing with and you can target them effectively. Otherwise, you're guessing. And sometimes you have no choice but to guess. Sometimes you have no way to run a fecal and you're like, oh, fly in my nose. No, you're not like fly in your nose, but I did have a fly up my nose there. But sometimes you're like, look, something's wrong with my birds. I know it's a parasite. I don't know which one it is, and I'm just going to have to try. Sometimes that's the best you can do because you don't have any access to any diagnostic materials or tests, and nobody in your area will help you. That happens. And in that case, you're just going to have to hit and miss it, and it's not ideal, but it is what it is. If you have the ability to figure out exactly what parasite is plaguing your ducks, take advantage of it. Again, not everybody has that opportunity. So do what you have to do to treat them. Now, when using any parasite treatment, external or internal, follow the label directions and make sure you're following those product directions. You don't want to overdose, but underdosing is no good either, because underdosing essentially means you end up with the whole opposite problem where you sort of treated it and now that parasite can get resistant to the thing you treated it with, and now you're back at square one and you can't use what you originally used. So you don't want to underuse. Underusing is just as bad as overusing. So make sure you're using the right dose. So let's put that all together. Treatment has its place, but prevention is better. So quick parasite prevention checklist. You want to keep bedding clean and dry. Provide access to clean water for bathing. Avoid overcrowding your pens. You don't want too many ducks in one spot. You want to rotate grazing or foraging areas. Quarantine new birds 30 feet for 30 days before you add them to your flock. And you want to make sure you monitor your ducks for any changes in their behavior, weight, appetite, anything. Take a look at your flock. How are they doing? It's important. You also want to work with a vet or a lab for parasite diagnostics if you can. Okay. Again, you might have a veterinary lab in your area. Maybe you have a college, a vet college where they can run a fecal for you. Find out. State AG departments, ask them if they know of a resource. It'll help. Again, not everyone will have access. And if you don't, do the best you can, right? You got to do the best you can with what you've got when it comes to taking care of your birds. So use the resources you have, and not everyone has access to the same resources. Let's remember that when we are in Facebook groups and we're telling people, well, you need to take your chicken to the vet. Not everyone has access to the same resources you do. Okay, so remember to use the resources you have, but not everyone has the same resources. Parasites may be a fact of life for ducks, but they don't have to become a huge problem. By staying alert, practicing good flock management, and acting quickly when you see signs, you can keep your ducks healthy and happy. Now that is going to be it for me here today at Andersen Acres. Let me know what the strangest or most unexpected thing that you've learned about duck care is. What surprised you? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. We'll see you tomorrow.